This week we are kind of going back more to the format. Before, we were interviewing. We had an interview last week. This week will be more of a recap of the week's news and
News analysis.
discussion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I think we can start off just kind of something interesting. I've been reading Into the Buzzsaw, which is a anthology of different reporters, journalists, talking about the question of the independence of the media and also kind of um, the suppression of certain stories, despite ostensibly having freedom of press and the First Amendment, which I think is kind of to some extent, it calls into question that premise, but it's also trying to kind of vindicate that idea by having this kind of series of you have exposés and then you kind of show that they're not allowed to breathe and they get smothered, and then you can have this book kind of bring journalists together, because there's this repeated theme in this book which I recommend to people, that journalists don't really like to share, and they can be proprietary in some ways. That kind of gets brought up a lot.
Protecting your scoop.
Yeah, and there are reasons for that, the confidentiality of sources and whatnot, but that's kind of the idea of bringing these journalists together to question that collectively helps to
But I think you should point out that this book is really by it's okay. This book is really by mainstream corporate journalists. Yeah. That is, these are people who worked in CBS, or in the case of Gary Webb, the
San Jose Mercury.
San Jose Mercury or New York Times, or etc. So basically, Christine Borgeson, who is the woman who basically compiled these stories, worked for CBS and was fired, in essence, after she was reporting on the downing of TWA Flight 800 in it was 1996. Yeah, I think in 1996, where basically the Navy is pretty established. She had dozens and dozens of witness reports. The Navy shot a missile up, which blew up this plane taking off from Kennedy Airport, and they needed to cover it up. And the way they covered it up, they said it was a spark that went near the fuel tanks, and that blew up the plane. So, because she was reporting on this and trying to put out the real story, she was fired, and her story was suppressed. So that's basically. So it's not all journalists, but it's the corporate journalists, and again, that shows the importance of independent, non-subservient, non-subsidized by the system journalism like Haiti Liberté. But how many of the pieces have you read in it?
Well, I've read Gary Webb's. I'm familiar with Gary Webb's Dark Alliance. One, because there's a movie on Netflix called Kill the Messenger, with what's his name, Jeremy, the Jeremy Renner or something.
Renner, right.
Which is about Gary Webb, but this piece, which is not, because Dark Alliance came out,
and you should explain Dark Alliance, what it is for.
That would take
forever. Well, basically, the CIA was selling drugs in cities in the U.S. to fund the Contras and
The piece in the book in
Nicaragua.
this anthology is more of, it's after Dark Alliance has come out, and he's kind of, I don't recall if he had already been fired or had resigned. And a lot of the authors in this who are contributors have been fired or dismissed in some way, and have had to go and be independent, and made this book by being independent. But he kind of reflected on how this is after having written Dark Alliance, and a lot of journalists are putting this there as well. He was kind of thinking like, how many awards am I going to win from this, and how this is going to be heralded by people, are going to be their eyes are really going to be wide open, and then instead they just gradually chipped away. The paper would, his editors would express support for the piece, and then they'd retract support after some kind of ad hominem attack was launched against him for some. So I think, to summarize it, a lot of what they reveal is that the mainstream media, if you want to call it that, has a lot of time, and the kind of official keepers of the record and the truth, so-called, have a lot of resources naturally, as we know, to go through, poke holes in specific things that they can then use to distract people, and then half the population is kind of not paying attention to these stories anyways, and they get lost beneath like OJ Simpson and the more
sensational.
Yeah. So it's been interesting to read, especially that a lot of these stories they're from the 90s, but you'll have like AP going back in time, and that's kind of rare, as the guy who wrote for AP, I think his name is Bob Port. He talks about how they went back to look at this Korean War era massacre. And so, the AP people were like, well, why do the editors, whoever, were saying, well, why are we, when we should be focused on this kind of constantly new news and the novel stuff, which is going to get people are kind of addicted to the stream of information. Why should we do investigative reporting? And then he was kind of exposing that this massacre happened, and they eventually just pushed him out, and then kind of later claimed credit for it and stuff. So I think it's also worth looking at how historians and people who are trying to kind of be very meticulous with records, and try to ground everything in context, which is important, because a lot of the news that we get is so decontextualized. So I think that's kind of what has borne out from it, is those people don't get a lot of respect. They get called conspiracy theorists, and
it becomes ad hominem attacks. And this book was written, it should be said, in 2002 or so. So it was really before the internet and social media became what it is today. And now we have Substack and Patreon and all these ways that independent journalism can get their message out, even if it's on individual basis of each author and writer, Glenn Greenwald or Chris Hedges, or various former journalists or would-be journalists who make their platform, make their soapbox. But that too, social media, it must be remembered, is funded by, controlled by, in many cases, the Pentagon. So they know what you want to read, but they also know what they want you to read. And so they make it So the first place you go is to your social media feed, where it's spoon-fed to you, the articles, but they'll give you a few that you want to see, but then they'll give the ones they want you to see and kind of move you onto another diet. So it's a very insidious, sophisticated, algorithm-driven world that we have, and people don't, back in the day, before the internet, before social media, you would go out and you'd get your newspaper, and you knew this newspaper was more likely to give you good news, or the news that you trusted. And then for a brief period, there was just go to the website of the press organ that you want. But now it's people just go to social media. They don't even go to the website. So people don't necessarily seek out news independently. They just wait to be spoon-fed. So this is something that was written before this period. And so really it needs an updated version for the new twists and traps and algorithms and strategies they put in place to control the narrative. So Haiti Liberté is a good place to start before you go to your X feed or your Facebook feed or your Instagram feed. Go to Haiti Liberté when you're looking for news on Haiti, or even world news, because we do have a lot of world news there. And maybe that's how we can segue into this week. One of the things I'd like to call people's attention to is a long article on Chad by our own Alexandra Panaguli, who is a world traveler, worked for many years in El Salvador with the FMLN, is very worldly and knowledgeable, visited parts of Asia. But the most recent piece she's done is on Chad. And this is important. It's a very long piece, and on the website you will find the consolidation of several chapters that were published already in Haiti Liberté in the pages of the newspaper. This week has one installment, but you can find a consolidated first part there. It's about it's quite long, and there's a second part coming, but it will really give you a picture of Chad. And this is important because the occupation force, which has been sent into Haiti, what's now called the Gang Suppression Force, GSF, or FRG in French, Force de Répression des Gangs, is being headed by the Chadians now. And this is important to realize that Chad, which is one of the poorest of the former French colonies in Africa, has really become also one of the most brutal army forces. Not that the Kenyans weren't also brutal, particularly in Kenya. They didn't see that much action in Haiti. But this force is now going to be different from the Kenyan force, which was called the Multinational Security Support Force, in that it's autonomous. They can do what they want. They don't need to coordinate with the government or with the police. They are free agents. They're like bounty hunters. They can go, they can arrest, they can kill, they can do whatever they want independently of the Haitian government. So this is essentially controlled by the US, because the US is the one paying most of the bill for this mercenary force. Even though it's been blessed by the UN will be paying for logistics for this force. And there was an article 2 weeks in the paper about the visit of the UN officials who will be interfacing for this force. But we're entering a very terrible time. It's already started, we could say, beginning really in December of 2025, January, February, We'll have an article this coming week on one other massacre in Bel Air. We've done quite a few, and Haiti Liberté is alone in that distinction of providing news about these massacres. But this is, a terrible chapter coming up. Gaza has set the template, which is basically just destroy the neighborhoods where the people you oppose are based. And that's what they've done for the Vivre Ensemble, that is the Armed Neighborhood Alliance of Haiti. For the Vivre Ensemble neighborhoods, they've just gone and mowed people down, shot them in the street, created terror. And those that aren't killed, they run away. They leave. They go to camps, resettlement camps, what they used to call in Vietnam strategic hamlets, where they would drive the population that supported the Vietnamese guerrillas. Now the same way they're sending the people. So Vivre Ensemble is very much on its back foot now. And in any case, that all started with this long article on Chad. Haiti Liberté is one of the few places you can get this kind of background relevant to Haiti on it. So read Alexandre Panagouli's long piece. If you don't read French, it is in French. You just do the, right click or control click on it. It'll translate it for you in Google. Google now with its Gemini AI, which is not the best of the AI, of course, but it translates a moderately understandable version in English, and you can read it that way. So the Chad troops deployment, which started this past week, which is again the top title cover, from Kenya to Chad, same mission, same fight. That is the lead article in this week's paper. But the bottom article, again, as you can see, and we didn't do the issue review this week, but you can review it yourself on Haiti Liberté for free. The hike in gas prices is unleashing the anger of the people. And so essentially, that's the big news is, as it is around the world, the rocketing to the sky of gas prices, and particularly in Haiti, where gas, or I should say petroleum products, are not just used for transportation, and now a gallon of gas is $5.53, and a gallon of diesel is $6.48, but also for cooking, because you have to think in Haiti, people who are not using charbon or charcoal, as the cooking wood is called, charbon, basically a stick which is cooked underground and then can be used in a little stove. For those who don't use that, they use kerosene. And kerosene has gone up to $6.44 a gallon or a liter. No, I think it's a gallon. So this is a huge, huge crisis in Haiti, just to move, to sell, for the markets to work, and for people to cook their food. The prices have gone through the roof. So, of course, there were huge demonstrations last Monday. Maybe there will be some more this coming Monday, tomorrow. But last Monday, all of Delma, a lot of the Frere Road, Nazon, Bourdon, in several areas of key arteries of Port-au-Prince were shut down by demonstrations. People had to get out of buses, out of tap-taps, off motorcycle taxis, because the demonstrators were making a point. So we'll see how this goes forward in Haiti. But for sure, we are seeing a period of tremendous anger and misery as this war that Israel and the US have launched against Iran continues to take its toll. We know today J.D. Vance, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner are all in Islamabad, Pakistan, negotiating supposedly a ceasefire, but we have, and most people have very little faith that this means an end to this war. This ceasefire will probably be just a pause in what is likely to be months more of conflict in one way or the other, knowing the bad faith of not just the Israeli government, which is, of course, become the poster child of ceasefire violations, but the U.S. We have to remember this is in the U.S. DNA of the, I forget the exact number, but I think of the 331 peace treaties that the U.S. signed with Native Americans as they conquered this continent. I think all of them were violated in one way or the other, many of them egregiously. After they would say one deal, they would, a couple of years later, a couple of months later, in some case, totally throw it in the garbage. So this is, unfortunately, for this declining, unraveling empire, their MO, their modus operandi, is the violation, the abrogation, the betrayal of the treaties that it signs. So the gas price demonstrations and riots we should expect to see more of. And I guess the main story this week, and feel free to jump in anywhere in this, Joseph, since you also, as a Miami or a South Florida native, may have some insights, is the trial going on in Miami for the assassination on July 7th, 2021 of Jovenel Moïse. Now, this week saw some very, very interesting, and hopefully not the end, of testimony, particularly from a former Haitian senator for the Lavalas family party called Jovenel Joseph, who was a part of this conspiracy. Now, granted, he was just a low-level sort of fixer or organizer of people at the base. He's not part of the financing and the intellectual authors. So he was more of an employee at a lower level. But he gave some very interesting revelations. Among them, that two of the Colombians who helped assassinate Jovenel Moïse were killed by the Colombians themselves. This was one thing nobody knew. Of course, there were lots of theories that the Colombians didn't really kill them. In fact, it was the Haitians. But Jovenel Joseph, who was apparently spilling his guts out on the stand, explained that, in fact, two of the triggermen were killed shortly after even before the big firefights with the Haitian cops and with the population, where several were captured, where many were captured. I think there were 23. They were killed, in fact, by their own brethren, precisely a little bit like, say, Lee Harvey Oswald was killed. So they couldn't spill the beans about what was happening. But was it Palacios, who is also in custody and will presumably testify, who killed them? That may be the case. But in any case, Jovenel Joseph and Palacios, after the killing, went and were harbored by Vitellom Innocent of the Tabar region of Port-au-Prince. He is now part of the Vivre Ensemble Alliance. But at that point, he was working for what's called the SDP, the Secteur Démocratique Populaire of André Michel, who was part of the Ariel Henry government and is part of this government, and is basically a figure in the post-Jovenel period who controls a huge part of the political class. And at that point, in 2021, Jovenel Moïse was working, not only is part of the what was called the GPEP, which was a coalition aligned with the government, aligned with the bourgeoisie, against the G9 of Jimmy Cherizier and André Giscard and Chrysler in Carrefour. But they were working very closely with the government, with the police, and with the SDP. I mean, with the, they were working with the SDP against the Jovenel Moïse government. So Palacios and Jean-Joël Joseph went to stay at Vitelhome's compound. Vitelhome has since reversed himself because he was betrayed by the SDP and has spilled the beans on them. But this really shows the role of the opposition in this operation. And one of the interesting things, and we've always questioned, because there's a picture of one of the meetings of the plotters of this assassination meeting, and you see the back of a person who looks very much like Pierre Espérance. Now, Jean-Joël Joseph referred to a certain Pierre, but he didn't give the full name. So we'll be looking more into that. Haiti Liberté will do their best to get to the bottom of this, but we're 99.9% sure Pierre Espérance was part of that, just judging from the picture where the back of his head, his ears, and his shoulders, it very much appears to be him. One other thing that Jean-Joël Joseph put out was, those were the key things, were the Vitelhome aspect, the killing of the two Colombians. But one of the journalists covering this trial, and she did a very good video, which people can find online, is Foucault, who has been attending the meetings, and she did a very interesting one on Jimmy Cherizier and explaining how the conspirators, the mercenaries, their biggest concern, one of their biggest concerns, maybe their biggest, was what would be the response of Jimmy Cherizier. They were scared that he could really end up being some sort of response or obstacle to carrying out this mission of assassinating Jovenel Moïse. And indeed, Jimmy Cherizier, after Jovenel was assassinated, did organize a rally to decry that. Now, shortly before, in late June of 2021, Jimmy Cherizier came out against Jovenel Moïse, even though he'd said, listen, we're not aligned with Jovenel Moïse, we're not aligned with the opposition. That was his position before. But he did come out, and you can see that in our film, Another Vision, and in our articles in Haiti Liberté. He did come out and organize a huge rally in La Saline in June of 2021, where they called for Jovenel to step down, to leave power. So nonetheless, this was just because Jovenel was, in essence, attacking the armed groups of the G9 and was not sympathetic at all to the G9's demands and mission and calls and agenda. So in any case, these mercenaries were very concerned about Jimmy Cherizier, who they called Jimmy Bond, a play on James Bond, the MI6 agent of Hollywood lore, based on a series of books written by a former MI6 agent, Ian Fleming. So basically, she did a half-hour, 45-minute report on that particular element of the trial. Now, hopefully, people can tune in the coming weeks. Next week, our collaborator, Kervins Louisant, hopefully will this coming week be part of the trial and joining it. And we hope to have reports from him and analysis from him. Hopefully next week we'll have him as a guest. But and Kervins, who is, I think, well equipped to deal with the coming part of the trial, because the part that's really going to be interesting to me, Joseph, is when they get Rudolph Jar, who was the money guy of this operation.
This is, if I remember correctly, they funneled some of this money through Broward County. There's some kind of
through Broward.
Yeah, there's some kind of in Weston. There's some kind of
Weston,
Florida. There was and that the names are kind of escaping me, but there was a front set up, and I forget if it was under a kind of a bank or a kind of
LLC.
Yeah, something like that, where they, used it to move the money. The Colombian guys did. So I don't know, that name just sort of rang a bell in my head. I don't know if this is the same money guy who's doing that.
Well, he may well be. He put in some of his money, but the point is, he is a member of the very small, very insular world of the Haitian bourgeoisie. And our sources have told us that there was some kind of coalition of bourgeois businessmen and actors who put into a pot the money to basically finance this operation, because it, of course, had to cost a good bit of money. One of the items that came out of the trial was that some of the people were paid less than they'd foreseen. Like Badio was supposed to get a lot of more money, and he only got $10,000. Former police chief Leon Charles was supposed to get more money, but he only got $10,000. So anyway, 10,000 was sort of the bottom of what people were getting paid. But one of the key things, and in Haiti Liberté, I didn't have time before the podcast to go check that, but we had an article a couple of years ago by a money laundering expert in the Dominican Republic who used to work for Citibank and found that on the order more than $30 million was laundered for this operation through the Dominican banking system. So people can go check on that. He put this out. Of course, nothing has followed up after it. But all of this to say that this bourgeoisie, and people, of course, know the names of Dimitri Vorbe and Reginald Boulos as two of the principal bourgeois figures who were at war with Jovenel Moïse. And it is no coincidence, we think, this week, again, hopefully a lot of this will be clarified, that Reginald Boulos, one of the foremost and most well-known Haitian bourgeois businessmen, who was also the founder of a political party called the MTV. It used to be the movement for the third way, pour le troisième voie. But after the assassination, he left Haiti. He spent some time in Turks and Caicos or Providenciales, and then on to Miami, where he was living in a $1 million home up, I believe it was Pembroke Pines, if I'm not mistaken, and where he was arrested for his support for so-called gangs. It's never been clear how that would have panned out, but it is well known that he worked very closely with Gabriel of Cité Soleil, who was basically the founder of the GPEP, in response to the G9 and fought with the G9. So, well, long story short, Jovenel Moïse was arrested. He then tried to contest his arrest by saying that he was an American citizen and he couldn't be deported back to Haiti because he was born in the US. He had changed his citizenship to Haitian citizenship so he could run for president in Haiti as the president and leader of the MTV. But that was only because that change did not go through. So he said, I'm still an American. But anyway, it didn't work out, and he was just sent without any penalties, really, other than spending several months in lockup, immigration lockup. He was sent to Colombia. Now, is that a coincidence that one of the key suspects of at least the population as a financier, as an intellectual author of Jovenel Moïse's assassination, has now been sent to Colombia? Doesn't seem to be the timing leads one to have a lot of questions about what that's all about. But in any case, this was a rather long-winded detour to say that Kervins, Louis Saint, is very familiar with the Haitian bourgeoisie. He's some sort of specialist, in addition to being really a philosopher and a great analyst whose columns appear often in Haiti Liberté, but he is in some ways an expert on the Haitian bourgeoisie and the different networks and actors in that bourgeoisie. So look for Kervins' reporting and interviews here. And the last thing I'll say, unless you have something to add on that particular front, I was just going to make a mention in this week's paper. We have an article both in French, or I should say an obituary, both in French and in English, on our friend Fritzner Pierre. You can see his picture there, who was a long time militant activist here in New York, but also in Haiti, also in Miami. He came to New York in about 1976, and all through the years of Haiti Progrès, where Bethany Dupont and myself worked in the 1980s, and 90s, and early 2000s, and Haiti Liberté, which was founded in 2007. Fritzner was always a supporter and we could say a comrade, helping fix things. He was a handyman. He helped build this room where we are, the Harry Numa room. He helped fix doors. He was a very helpful, but he was above all a poet, and a working class poet who would give extemporaneous poems at demonstrations that would come out almost every week during the years of the Duvalier dictatorship and the neo-Duvalierist period afterwards. And then He, of course, got involved in the Lavalas movement of the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, and militated even within the Lavalas family party for a while. But he was, he'd been part of some communist organizations as well here in the US. But he was an extremely, I could say, conscientious comrade and a great artistic force. Not only his poetry, but his artwork. He would do these beautiful coffins, sort of symbolic cardboard coffins, which people would carry on their heads, or signs, written with beautiful designs and paintings and lettering. So Fritzner, who was born in 1947, died in 2026. It was a great loss to see his passing at too young an age. He died in Miami, heart failure at home in North Miami, up just off 12th Avenue. So anyway, our condolences to his family and to all the other friends and comrades who knew Fritzner Pierre over these many decades of work in the trenches of the Haitian struggle for democracy and justice. Yeah. So there may be other elements we want to address, Joseph, with respect to the pending Third World War, still possibly going to reignite after the failure in one way or the other of the coming negotiations, not to be too pessimistic. You as the political scientist.
No, I can't. I mean, other than to say that when you said, these things can't be a coincidence in the Moïse assassination.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that says it. That says a lot right there.
Yeah, we're very how shall I say, suspicious or prudent in our trust of this trial in Miami, because for us here at Haiti Liberté, just from all the cases we've seen historically, we'd be shocked and surprised if the U.S. did, if not had foreknowledge, was not involved in some way in this assassination, either directly or indirectly. It's just too hard to believe. And if you look at the U.S. Embassy, the fourth largest U.S. embassy in the world in Haiti, you'll see it's covered with every form of antenna. It looks like a porcupine. Is it possible that you had 30-odd mercenaries of Colombian origin and Haitian American origin working, living, talking on their phones, planning this in Haiti for close to 3 months, and they didn't have a clue about it? They didn't know anything about it? It seems, and not only that this came up also in John Joel's testimony, that the FBI was present at one of these meetings. An FBI agent was present. So this is almost impossible to believe that the U.S., who is now, it is Trump's Justice Department, who is now prosecuting these members of the conspiracy which carried this out in Miami, because they were organizing it from the United States in large part, it's very hard. It strains incredulity to believe that it strains credulity, I should say, to think that they were unaware and had no part in this. So, in any case, that we'll see what comes out of this trial. Hopefully, Curvins, in conjunction with, but it should be said that very little is coming out in the Haitian press about this. This, of course, should be the story of the decade, or at least of this year. But it has gotten very little coverage, and we at Haiti Liberté are trying to gather our very meager resources to get better coverage of this. And we salute Foucault on her excellent report that she did, and she's done others in recent weeks. So we look forward to being able to bring you that, as well as the reporting in Haiti Liberté in the coming weeks. I think that's all I had for this week. It's a relatively short little podcast, but people are busy and have many things to do. I see, do we have a comment there that we need to reply to? No? Okay, good. So you may see this on the Haiti Liberté website. We'll try to put it up. Go check out the interview with Tim Schwartz last week about El Lío del Gringo. Again, an excellent book on the Dominican Republic. And we will be back next week, we trust.
Yeah, we'll be back next week. Hopefully, Curvins can give an update on the trial and the developments and the questioning. A lot of information comes out in kind of the back and forth of on details and unsealing of evidence and requests for information and that kind of stuff is important to hone in on. It's good to have somebody present at the trial to kind of especially be witness to the the questioning of witnesses and the defendants and
right. And we should say we're just in the prosecution stage of the trial. We haven't gotten to the defendant's response. So right now it's just the prosecution making their case. I should also mention that on May 10th, our May 10th broadcast, that's in 3 weeks, I'll be in Dominican Republic. So I'll try to give a report on the situation in DR, which continues to be a very difficult situation for the Haitian community there, as increasingly Luis Abinader, the Dominican president, is upping his campaign against Haitians and his servility to the U.S., his role in assisting the U.S. in the attack on Venezuela and the continuing attack against Cuba is just terrible. And anyway, we'll have a little update from the ground on that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for tuning in, and see you next week for another edition of This Week in Haiti Live.
So what's that little